Hello, welcome back. Today, which is actually tonight, right now, we are going to be making this adorable purse. I was going to call it a small tote, but I really think purse is the right title. It has a cute little pocket on the outside of the back. It has this adorable bird pattern. It has a corduroy base. Inside, it is fully lined with 2 pockets inside. I think it's perfect for spring. You could make it for any season that you want, depending on the fabric that you choose. I think this is going to be a really fun project for us to do together today. So let's get started. Here are the supplies we're going to need to make this little purse slash tote. I have this adorable fabric that I have been saving. I got it on Etsy. It is such a pretty fabric, and I kind of fussy cut it so that I could use the part of it I wanted. That's going to be the front and the back of the bag, and we're going to be using some foam to give it some pretty good stability. And then we also have this adorable fabric will be the lining. And these are some pockets. There'll be 1 pocket on the outside and 2 pockets on the inside. I think that I'm going to actually put the pocket on the other side because I don't want to block this adorable view of these 2 birds. We have a couple of zip ends. We have a zip pull. This is going to be the base of the bag, so it'll be down here at the base, and the base of the bag will also be stabilized with foam. These are the straps that will be stabilized with fusible fleece. However, we may, and this is going to be a game time decision, we might use some cotton webbing instead, which also looks really good with this fabric. And then we have our zipper, which I always like for my zipper to be 2 miles long, so I don't have to worry about sizing it because it's going to be pretty much oversized, and then I'll cut it down. That is the supplies we need. The first thing we're going to do is go iron on all of our stabilizers, and then we'll get busy sewing. So here's how we're going to prepare the straps. We're going to take one side of the long end, and we're just going to turn it in about maybe a little more than 1/4 of an inch, less than 1/2 an inch, and iron that down. And then on the other side, we're going to fold it over about 1 inch, and we're going to iron that all the way down. Then once we have ironed down this 1 inch on top, we're going to take our fusible fleece, and we're just going to lay it in that little channel that we created. We're going to have a little bit of extra on both ends, and that's okay. We want that. And we're just laying that part that we folded over and ironed about 1 inch on top of that. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to iron that all the way down. Once that's ironed all the way down, we're going to take this other edge, fold it over, and iron that all the way down. And then we'll be sewing right on that seam. And then do that for the other strap as well. To prepare our zipper pull, which is going to go on the end of the zipper so that we can have something longer to hold on to pull that zipper open and closed, we're going to take our piece of fabric, which is about 2 inches by 6 inches. We're going to turn it over. We're actually going to fold in this side and press it. And then we're going to fold in this side and press it. This doesn't have to be exact. I've just folded both of the ends over, and now I'm just going to fold it in half. It's going to be a really skinny piece of fabric. I'm going to press it, and then I'll put a clip in it. I always say there's 4 steps when you're sewing a project. First step is when you are planning. So you're designing, maybe you're getting a pattern. The second step is cutting out, and that's when you get all of your materials cut out. The third step is pre-sewing, which is what we have just completed, where you do all of the things that you have to do that don't involve the sewing machine. And then the fourth step is the sewing. So what we've done now is we have prepared, but we haven't begun to sew yet. So the next step that we're going to do is going to involve only our front and back pieces. And what we're going to do with them, we're going to quilt them. Now, you don't have to quilt them. You could make your bag unquilted. And actually, I strongly considered not quilting it because I love this scene. But I do think that I want it to be quilted. I also like the look of being quilted. So I am going to quilt the bag. And I struggle with quilting straight lines, so I've kind of found a way to cheat. And what I do is I use these pens that are made by Madame Sew, and I'm just going to draw the lines that I want to quilt, whatever they are. And then when I have finished quilting, I take this to the iron, and voila, the lines go away. And you will see I leave a little bit of the foam around the edges showing, and I won't trim that off until after I've quilted it. All I'm doing to prepare my piece for quilting is I have drawn a red line with this removable ink. Do not use a regular pen. And then I place the 1.5 inch mark on that line all the way down. I try to make sure that I'm lining my fabric up with my cutting board here, so I'm trying to get straight lines. I've lined up this line, and I'm just drawing a line. This pen is almost gone. Thank goodness I got a new box. I think it comes today. So I'm just drawing it, and then I move it over. And then these red lines are where I'm going to stitch. All right, so here we are, all beautifully quilted. I think they turned out really nice. So they've been quilted, the front and back piece, and they've been trimmed. So the foam is now trimmed off of the edges. All right, so we have some bits and pieces that we need to take care of. So we have put the main part of the bag aside. These are the zipper ends, and they're really ready to go. We'll be adding them to the zipper in a few steps. You can put that aside for now. This is the zipper pull, and we do need to stitch it along each of the long sides, just so it all stays together. Eventually it'll go into the little hole in the end of the zipper so that we have a longer pull on there when we're opening and closing our bag. And then we have the straps. So I did make the decision to go with the main fabric straps rather than the cotton webbing. I think it's the right call. I decided it when I saw how adorable they are. I mean, I'm so in love with this fabric. So what we need to do to get them ready is we need to trim off the extra foam that we have up there. Ideally, you'd like for there to be a little bit less foam, or this is actually not foam, it's fusible fleece. You'd like for there to be about a 1/2 inch down here where there isn't any. But we're gonna trim that off, and we're gonna take these straps to the machine, and on a pretty short length stitch, like a 2.5, we're gonna stitch right down the middle where you can see where I folded it over, as close to the edge as we can. What we need to be careful of is that we totally enclose in that. We don't want any of those raw edges to show as these straps get used and abused. Then we will go down then I actually turn it over and I go down each of the sides just with a top stitch. It just gives the strap a little more stability, it gives it a better shape, and it looks nice. And once we finish with those few little sewing pieces that we need, we'll go back to our main part of our bag and we'll work on our pockets next. Straps are over here waiting, they're next. All right, so for the zipper pull, we're just gonna take it and we're gonna put our needle right on the very edge, like, I don't know, a 1/16 of an inch is what it looks like. We're gonna make our stitch size pretty small, about 2.5. And we're gonna stitch a little bit, and then we're gonna back up. And we're just gonna go down that edge. The thing I love about my Zuki is how fast you can sew, but this is not fast sewing. This is, for me, go slow so you don't mess it up. And then when you get down here to the end, you're gonna back up a little bit to lock that stitch, and then we're gonna do the other side. Same way, we're just gonna we're gonna put it right on the edge of the side of the pull there. And I'm gonna put my thread back there, line it up. I'm gonna stitch a couple of stitches, then I'm gonna back it up. I'm locking that stitch. This little zipper pull is gonna take a lot of punishment, being the thing that is used, you know, often. Open and close the bag. All right, and so that's our zipper pull. It's gonna be perfect. Now for our straps, we're gonna keep I think I'm gonna move my stitch length up to about 3 inches. And we're actually going, remember I told you guys that we were gonna do a stitch down the middle to stitch the part where we put the two sides together down, and then we'll flip it over and we'll go down each of the sides of it with like a top stitch. So we're gonna start by going a few stitches and then back stitching. And we're just gonna go right, and we are just about I don't know, as close to the edge of not being on that seam as we can be. We need to be sure that we catch it so that the strap stays closed. But we don't want there to be a lot of extra fabric. We want the stitch to be right down where that seam ends. If you do make it like all the way, let's say that you made it all the way over there, then you've got this little flap that could be problematic on a strap that you don't want to get stuck on your clothes. We already did this once before we found out there was no bobbin. That's just the way it goes when you sew. Get down here to the end and lock it. And so now we've got the middle seam finished with a couple of extra threads. Now we're ready to flip it over, and we're going to sew down really close to both edges. This just makes it look nice. It gives it a little more structure. I'm going to make it a little tiny bit bigger stitch, not much. And we're gonna back up to lock it here in the beginning. And then we're just going to go right down that edge. And that strap is finished. So it's got, this is the finished side. It's got a seam down the middle, and it's got a seam on each side. And it's going to be really, really, really pretty on our purse. Now we're going to work on our pockets. This is a pocket that's going to go on the inside. Because I'm going to sell it as a purse, I think it needs at least 2 pockets inside. So we're going to make 2 that are actually made of the outside fabric, but they're going to go inside. And all I've done is taken the fabric, folded it up on itself. So I've cut out a piece double the length of what I want the pocket to be. And I'm just going to start right here at this needle. And I'm going to stitch, and then I'm going to back up. I'm shortening my thread stitch because I do want my pocket to be pretty strong. Go over here to the corner. Go down the edge. When I get down here to the end, I'm going to back stitch. And I'm going to come out of there. And then I'm going to start over here on the other side. I'm going to back stitch. I'm going to go up here to the corner, leave my needle down, pivot, and then go over to this needle and also back stitch. Take my little pins out. And then before we turn it, we're actually going to clip off the excess fabric on the corners. We don't need that. So we'll just clip that off. We want to make sure we don't get near our stitch line. Just cut it off. It makes for a much cleaner corner pockets. And all we do is we just turn it right side out. Gently, because we don't want it to come unstitched where we just stitched it together. Just kind of make sure that you finger poke your corners out like so. And then once you've done that, kind of poked them out with your fingers, then take your little turning stick gently and just poke out the corners. The more you do this, the crisper your corners look, the better the pocket looks. And once you've done that, we're going to take this and we're going to fold this. I will say this about this adorable fabric that I absolutely love. It is the stringiest fabric. So then what we're going to do, we're going to take that opening and we're just going to fold it in on itself, which it naturally wants to do because you've already created a seam on both ends. We're just going to fold that over like that. And we're going to pin that. That's actually going to be closed when we sew the pocket onto the lining of the bag. So for now, we're just going to leave it pinned. And that'll be the bottom. This part will be the bottom of the pocket. But so for the top, we're going to go ahead along that top and we're going to add a top stitch. Just all along this edge. Just to give the pocket, so when you're finished, you have stitching all the way around all 4 sides, including the side that is at the opening. So also you want to make sure that you back stitch because, again, it's a pocket. It's going to take some abuse. We're going to go just along that top edge, back stitch again. That's at about a 3. That's a little bit big for a top stitch, but it's a pocket, so it'll give it extra stability. All right, so that's one pocket. Now we're ready to put the pockets onto the part of the purse where they're going to live. We're going to find the center of the piece we're pinning it to, or the piece we're going to sew it to. And we do that just simply by folding it in half and then marking it. And I've put a little tiny red mark right there where the middle of the lining piece is. And then for the pocket itself, we can just fold it in half, This pocket was easy enough because it left a crease. I didn't need to make a mark. I could have used one of my handy dandy little Madame Sew markers, because then I would just iron it to get that mark to come off. Once I have put the pocket on the way I want it, and remember, we put a top stitch across the top, and that's because we know we won't be stitching it to anything. So we put it so that that top stitch that we've put on there goes toward the top. We are also going to be boxing our bottoms. And what that means is that instead of our bag just being a flat bag, it's actually going to have a little bit of width to it. And I'm planning on boxing it about 2 inches, which would mean that the bottom of the bag would more than likely be around this place. Actually, I do think maybe I'll move it up a little bit. So I'm deciding exactly where I want it based on that. And I think I am going to move it up just a little bit. Now, what we have to worry about up here is we're going to put a zipper in. So the zipper is going to take up some of that real estate you've got up there at the top. But even with a double what we would need for the zipper, we would still be in a good place right here. Then you pin it, and then you measure it one last time. So now we're ready once we get it all pinned and all do our final check. All right, so now we're going to take it over to the machine. We're going to stitch here, and then we're going to back stitch. We're going to come all the way down here, leave our needle in and pivot. Go this way, make sure we go close to the edge so we get the closure sewn closed. Pivot again, go up here, and then back stitch here a couple of times because we're going to be in and out of that pocket a lot. So we want the pocket to be on there pretty securely. Now the pockets are all on. This is the one that's going to be on the back of the outside. Very cute. I don't very often do that with the same fabric. That's how much I love this fabric. This is one for the inside that's really cell phone size. And then this is also one for the inside, which is a little bit bigger. And that is the pockets. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to go back to our front of our bag and our back of our bag. And we need to attach the base to the main part of the bag for both of these pieces. And then we'll stitch it all along here. We'll open it back up when we're finished, and we'll top stitch it, which will help to keep that seam where we want it to be. Okay, so now we have the base sewn onto the main fabric. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to box the bottom of all 4 of our pieces. And we're going to make our bottom of our bag, it's going to be boxed 2 inches by 2 inches. So we're just going to we're going to go down to the corner of the bag, and I'm actually going to use this this marker because this won't show at all. We're going to cut all this off. This is one of the markers that's hard to to clean off when you want it to be gone. All right, so we're just going to mark 2 inches by 2 inches. 1, 2, 1, 2. And we're going to do that on all 4 corners for both the outside piece, the 2 for the outside pieces, and the 2 for the lining pieces. Then we're just going to take a pair of scissors and we're going to cut off those boxes. Then we'll be sewing them back together, and that's going to make our beautiful boxed bottom, which is exactly what we want for this little bag. Now you could take this little square and you could put it on the lining pieces to use as a template to cut them out. Now it's time to put on our cute little straps. You could do them 2 ways. The way that I originally designed the bag was that they would be sewn with little X's on the outside, and I do think that will look really cute. Or we could actually sew them in between the fabric from the lining and the fabric from the outside and just have them be enclosed. But I think we'll probably go with my original plan. So the first thing we need to do if we're going to put the bag piece, the strap on the outside, is we need to go ahead and fold this edge over so that it's finished. So we're just gonna fold it over, and then when we put it against the bag, all of those raw edges are going to be covered. Now we're ready to put our strap onto the outside of our bag. We want to place it 2 1/4 inches from the center, each one of the straps. And I think about 2 3/4 of the inches the way down. Now, the thing that will determine if we can really do that is where this pocket is. That's why I'm doing this one first. We're gonna take our measuring tape and we're gonna go from that center mark, which is right here. We're gonna go from that mark 2 1/4 inches over, and that's where we want that strap to begin. So the first thing we're going to do to temporarily hold that place is we're going to put a pin going up and down. So then 2 1/4 inches from the other side is where we're going to put the other strap. So 2 1/4 inches is right there. And that would mean that strap, and again, we're making sure that the strap is not bent and that we've got the pretty side up. That would put that strap right about there. And we're gonna put a pin in it going up and down. I just measure 1 inch from the very bottom of the strap, and I put a pin going horizontally on there. And then I do the same thing over here. I go 1 inch. And that tells me exactly, this pin's telling me exactly where I want to sew my X that I'll be sewing in this strap. So we're just going to do the same thing with this side that we did with that one. Then we're going to take it to the machine and we're going to sew an X right here. It'll go across, down, across the very bottom, back up, and then we'll sew an X. And so there'll be an extra line of stitches at the bottom and the top as we make that X. Now the straps are on. They look so cute. I think this is a much cuter way than just tucking the straps inside of there. Oh, I really like the way that's turning out. So the next step that we need to do is we need to work on our zipper. So we're just gonna take the front of the bag here, and we're going to mark in from each one of the corners 1/2 inch, and we're actually gonna mark it with our cute little red pen that can be dissolved, even though we don't need to worry about that because this is all going to be within the zipper. So we just measure in 1/2 inch from each end, and then we measure the distance between those 2 lines. That's how long our zipper needs to be. And they are 1 little line short of 12 inches between them. Now that we know that our zipper needs to be 12 inches and a tiny little line, we are going to measure how long our zipper will actually be. Remember, we're using a zipper that's way longer than what our bag is. the first thing that I like to do, and this is kind of a new way to do zippers for me, but I am really, really pleased with how nice my zippers are turning out every time. I think this is the way I'll always do them. If you're making a bag that requires you to put an end on the zipper, this is the way to do it. And I will tell you that I think every bag needs an end, a zipper end. However, there are some bags that I make, like my little makeup bags where the zipper goes all the way around a corner, where I don't really think that it needs it, but I think it's gonna need it for this. So what I do is I cut off the end of the tape where the pull comes to the very end. I just cut off everything but about a ½ inch. And then I'm gonna pull my zipper down. This is a heavy duty zipper, which will be kind of nice for this purse. And I'm gonna take those teeth and I'm just gonna hold them together as best I can. And I'm gonna take one of these zipper ends and I'm gonna put it on there. Just like that. And what you wanna do is you wanna be sure that you've got the zipper tape together, and you wanna make sure that the ends of the zipper end are coming together. You don't want one overlapping the other or underlapping it. Then it'll be harder for you to stitch it on there. So we want it to look just like that. But what I do is I do this end first. So this is the end where the zipper is gonna land. It's not the end that only has that piece at it, okay? So I'm gonna take this over to my machine and I'm going to sew from here, having some lighting issues here. I'm gonna sew from here to here, just to close that and sew that tab actually on there. Now my zipper was a little tricky because these teeth are so big. It was hard to not hit them when I was stitching around them. So once you get it sewn on there, you can cut off the extras. And then you can actually take your bag that you've measured the points on, and you can lay this up against one of them, and you can mark on the zipper where the other end needs to be. And so that's going to be right there. So now I know that I need to take my zipper and I need to cut it off about a ½ inch above where that line is. These are my not for fabric, just cut the zipper up, scissors. And so now we've got, just gotta trim that off a little bit. All right, so now we have that trimmed except for that ½ inch there. We're gonna take the other zipper end and we're gonna put it on there. And we're gonna clip it on there. I think for this end, I'm gonna make my stitch length a little bit longer so I can hand crank it and hopefully get in between those teeth where I need to. So see how that's crooked? We don't want that. We don't want it to be crooked. We want those two sides to meet so you can sew it all in one piece. So that you know that you stitch it on the back and you stitched it on the front. Before you cut the little ends off, you're going to want to make sure that you have hit on that material on both sides, which we have. So we can go ahead and trim both of those ends off. And now we're ready to put our bag together, including putting our zipper on there. Here's how we're going to put our zipper on our bag. We're gonna take one of our outside pieces. We're gonna go with the back of it. And we're gonna put that pretty side up. Then we're going to take our zipper and we're gonna put it pretty side down, meaning the zipper pull itself is actually facing down toward the bag. I'm opening up the zipper a little. That's gonna make it a little bit easier for us to stitch around it as we put the zipper on. And we're just gonna take this, we're gonna line up the tips with the marks on the bag that we created. And then we're going to put one of our lining pieces. Now this is the back of my bag. It doesn't really matter, I've put a pocket on both ends. So I'm gonna take one of my lining pieces, this one, and I'm gonna put it pretty side down, facing the zipper. So we've got pretty side facing pretty side. And then I'm gonna make sure that I've lined it up down the sides. And I've also lined it up across this top with the zipper and with the other front piece. I'm gonna take this over to the machine and I'm gonna stitch right down here. Now you can feel the zipper teeth in there, but I'm just gonna sit my edge of my petal right on those teeth. You can use a zipper foot if you'd like. I don't usually, but I have a fairly thin petal on my Juki. So I'm gonna start here and I'm gonna stitch I'm gonna back stitch first. I'm gonna go all the way down to this end, and then I'm gonna back stitch when I get here as well. So after we sewed the zipper on, we folded it together with the seam or the inside on one side, the outside on the other, and we did a little top stitch up here. And that just keeps the lining out of our way. When we're zipping, it just kind of holds it over there. Now we're ready to put the other half of the bag onto the zipper. So we're going to take our other outside piece and we're going to lay it down pretty side up. We're going to take the zipper, which now has a part of the bag attached to it, and we're going to put that pretty side down. Now the zipper's going the other way, and we're just going to pin that. So we've pinned the outside pieces facing each other. And again, if you flip this open, pretty side to pretty side. And now we're gonna put the other lining piece facing this lining piece. So they are also pretty side to pretty side. And we're gonna make sure we've lined it up down the sides, and we will line it up across the top. We're gonna take this over to the machine again. We've got of the lining, pretty side, and of the bag itself, pretty side to pretty side. That's how we know we've put it all together right. We're gonna start right here, and we're gonna stitch all along there like we did the first time. Before I sew this side's top stitch, I'm gonna show you what I did. I've just sewn the zipper on like we talked about. I stitched it all the way down. Boy, is it really close here to make sure that it caught. Looks like it did. So I've stitched it all along here. So now what I want to do, in order to keep the lining out of the zipper, I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna flip it the other way. It's gonna be flipped so that one of the outer pieces and one of the lining pieces are together. Now you know you've got the right ones because this one over here, we've already top stitched. That's the one we did first. So we haven't done this one yet. So we're gonna lay them, I'm gonna go ahead and, I think I might zip it up a little bit just to keep them from getting in my way. And so what we're gonna do, we're gonna take it to the machine and we're gonna make sure that this lining and this piece are over here. And then for this side, we're gonna take it and this part's gonna go under the needle and we're gonna do a top stitch just like it is over here. And while we're doing it, we're gonna be pulling on the lining so that we end up with the lining and the outer piece as well, away from the zipper teeth. We're just gonna take very close little stitch all along here, just like we did over here. This is what our bag's looking like right now. We have sewn the zipper on. We have sewn it on to the outer pieces here, and we have sewn it on to the lining pieces in here. We can see that the lining is well away from the teeth, and we're almost finished with our bag. We still need to box the bottoms, and then we'll turn it and we'll be finished for the most part. This is a really important step that if you miss, you probably won't have a bag. You won't be able to flip your bag right side out. And that is, at this point, you want to open that zipper about 2/3 of the way. The farther you open it, the better, because the hole that we're creating is going to be what we pull the bag through. For the straps, I like to clip them together. And what I want to do is, I want to keep the straps away from here, and I want to keep the straps away from down here. All right, so now what we're going to do, after we've done those two things, zipper's open, straps are out of the way, however you decide to do it. If you have pockets, you can stick them down in the pockets. Now we're gonna take the two outer pieces and we're gonna fold them together, and they're gonna go to one side, and the two lining pieces are gonna go to the other side. So on this side we have pretty side lining, and we have pretty side outer pieces. And we're going to pin them together. We're actually going to stitch them together. So for the outside piece, we're just going to pin, or I'm just going to use these little clips, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're going to go around. I'll show you in just a second how we do that stitching. Just trying to match the two sides. It's important that you get these corners as close as you can to being lined up, and you've got some seams here that need to be lined up. So this seam, where the base meets the outside pack of the bag, we want those to be lined up with each other. And then I'm just gonna put a few other little clips in here, and then the outside piece is ready for me to sew it. When we get up here to the zipper, we wanna take extra care, because we do want the same thing. We want our seams to line up. So we want the top of the zipper and the top of the zipper to be up here together. And we're gonna put a clip right there. And the same over here. We want those two seams, because that's gonna really show if they're not lined up when you open your bag. Now for the lining piece, we're gonna do the same thing. One thing I wanna check is that up here by the zipper, I've done the same thing. I've got them lined up, and I'm gonna put a clip right in there. It's okay that we have a little bit more lining. We'll just wanna make sure that we come in a little bit farther in order to hit both sides. Not much, actually, hardly at all. I just had it folded. And then we're gonna clip this one over here. Same way. We're gonna go really slow when we go anywhere near that zipper. And then the other thing that we need to remember, so zipper is one thing to remember, and the other thing to remember is we need to leave an opening in the bottom of our lining so that we can turn the bag right side out. And we're actually gonna put pins in that instead of the clips. So we will remember this is our starting spot, this is our stopping spot. So now once you've got it sewn together, you are going to check it to make sure that it's actually caught on both sides. I will not be using this foam again. It was very difficult. It makes you feel like you're fighting it all the way through the machine. But it does look like I caught all of the seams. Uh-oh. So this one, it's caught, the seam is sewn, but the foam came loose, which doesn't happen if you have good foam. And, all right, so once you've done that, you want to box your corners. Before we do anything else, we're gonna box our corners. And they are not that difficult to do. We're gonna do the same thing to all 4 corners. We're gonna take, so we've left the square, there's the square. We're gonna take it and we're gonna pull it so that it makes one seam. And you can see the middle of it is this seam and this seam. We're gonna put a few clips in it. We're gonna take it to the machine, and with about a 1/2 inch, somewhere between 1/4 and a 1/2 inch seam allowance, we're gonna stitch across there. So we're gonna start here, back up, then go across here, and then back up, so that we'll have a seam there. I'll stitch it, and then I'll show you what it looks like. This is what I've done. I just stitched it across that box. So again, you take the corner where you've got the box, you lay them together so that you've got a seam here and you've got a seam here. You match them. You put a few clips in it. And I just always sew these open, sew the seams open. It doesn't really matter if you don't. In this case, it's a lining, so I don't think it's really gonna impact it a lot, but it does matter in some things we make. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it to the machine and I'm gonna stitch from here to here, back stitching at both ends. Here's my other lining seam. So these are both boxed. Now we need to do the same thing with our outer side. So we're just gonna pull them together. See how there's a seam here and there's a seam over there. We're gonna pull them together, line them up, and put a few clips in them. This is bulky enough fabric. You need to make sure you do open up that seam, lay it flat to stitch it. Just kind of clip it that way. Make sure you've got it lined up well in there. And we're just gonna stitch across here, which with this foam may not be fun. We'll go ahead and clip this one. So we just pull them together. We open up the seams. Just open up the seams so that they will lay flat. This is the bottom of the bag. And then we put a clip in there with both of them, both those seams open. And then we put, you really don't have to put any other pins, but again, if you, it makes you feel like you know you're keeping it together till you sew it. And you're just gonna sew straight across there, straight across there, and then we're almost finished with our bag. Now, after you've sewn those 4 boxed corners, it's also not a bad idea to go back and just trim off any excess. Got my bad scissors here. Trim off any excess that you've got here so that you won't have a big bulky seam. Now, I know people who leave it in there because they think that it gives that corner a little more support and a little more structure. And now, drum roll please. After you have gone around all of the corners and you've checked, you've gone down all of the sides and you've made sure that your seam has caught on both sides, which is really important because we could easily fix it if that's a problem right now. It's still going to be pretty easy to fix, but once you've done that, so here is how we flip the bag. Moment of truth. We go into this opening that we have in the bottom of the lining. We put our hand in there and we go all the way through to the very bottom, and we grab it and we pull it back through that opening. You do want to try to be a little gentle because you could rip some of these fresh seams, especially the ones where we left the opening. The secret to having the bag turn easily is that you left the zipper open as far as you could, and that you left a big enough opening in the bottom, depending on how much bulk there actually is to your bag. And I have made bags where the lining had fusible fleece and the outside had foam, and turning it through that small of a hole can be very, very challenging. So you will always see me leaving what may look like a crazy big opening. Once you've done that, you want to stick your hand down in here without the lining down there. It feels funny. It's got all that foam in there. We're just poking out the corners with just our finger. We're going to go ahead and unclip the straps so they can go where they go. And we're actually going to take it and we're going to put our lining down in it, even though we're going to pull that lining right back out in just a minute because we need to finish up that hole we left. But what we're doing here is we're seeing what our bag looks like before we sew that hole up, because right now we could easily go back in here and fix a place where we missed. We can repair errors. We can maybe make something look a little better if we don't like the way the stitching came out. Wow, that is a cute bag. There's what it's looking like on that side. Here's what it's looking like on the other side, which I think is the pretty side. The straps look good. So I think we're good to go back in. And again, you're going to want to do a really good once over to get all the threads. But before we're really done, we're going to go back in. We're going to grab that lining back out of there, pull it up. We're just going to clip that together. Now, there's lots of ways that you could do this. You could hand stitch it, do a little whip stitch that doesn't show. A whip stitch is a stitch that you do that all of the thread itself is down there in the seam. Or you could hand stitch it and just make it very tiny stitches that don't show. Or you can do what I do, which is machine sew it, because it's in the bottom of the bag and I don't think anyone's ever gonna notice it unless there's a problem. So we just stitch across here, really close to the edge, so that the lining is then closed up. So now we have it stitched together, that opening at the bottom. We're doing the eternal task of getting the strings, because even if it is at the bottom of the bag, somebody will see that thread. And then we're just going to take the lining and we're going to stuff it back down into the bag. Now we're ready to make sure that we have officially turned out every corner as far as it can possibly be turned out. We're going to push that lining down in there into all 4 corners. We're going to take the zipper pull. And remember, I said it's going to go through the zipper. It's just going to be attached to the zipper. It's going to allow us to open it and close it pretty easily. And both sides of mine looks pretty good, so it doesn't really matter which way I fold it. But see how there's actually a seam on that side? That should be the inside of it. So I'm going to kind of fold it together like that to get it into our little opening. Oh, and sometimes they just don't want to fit. This one's going to be tight. And you know, it's an easy thing to make if you need to make it with the lining fabric or make it with less fabric than what you originally did. You can do that too. Also, I choose my zippers based on how big their little opening is very often. I chose this one because it was heavy duty and I liked the color, but I am not sure that that is going to fit in there. Let's see what we can do. So I did exactly what I told you I have to do sometimes. I just remade it. Here's the original zipper pull, and this is the one that I just made that's a third less fabric. But I was able to get into that smaller, it's a little bit of a smaller zipper opening. And all I do is I pull it about halfway through, like so, and then I pull the ends down to where they meet. And you can always trim them if you don't like the way they meet. And then you just take it to your machine and you put a couple of rows of stitches in there. I actually think I'm going to turn it over because the other side looks prettier. All right, so now I'm going to take it over to the machine and I'm going to stitch right along there, just right along the end a couple of times, and then I'll have a very cute little zipper pull. So there you have it, this absolutely adorable purse or small tote bag that is fully lined, has 2 pockets inside and a third pocket on the back side, has this beautiful corduroy base. It's boxed enough that it'll stand on its own, and is absolutely adorable, functional, and you can make it with whatever fabrics you choose. I happen to love the fabric that I chose. So that is, that's our purse. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see you again soon.